the mind. This is the place where a person's destiny is decided. Whoever controls it, controls their life. Whoever lets it be led, becomes a slave to fleeting emotions, irrational impulses, and the desires of others. Every day your mind is pulled in directions you don't even notice. Distractions, worries, uncontrollable desires, other people's opinions. Many live like leaves in the wind, with no resistance, being swept away wherever the storm takes them. But not you. You want to be the master of your own thoughts. You want to be unshakable. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't try to control the world, because they knew that was impossible. Instead, they focused on themselves and discovered the greatest source of power a person can have: control over their own mind. No matter what happens around you, crisis, betrayal, disappointments, if you control your mind, nothing can destroy you. No offense, no loss, no external storm can shake someone who has built a fortress within themselves. But how do you reach this state? How do you shield the mind from chaos and unrest? How do you become a true commander of your thoughts? This is what you'll learn now. In this video, I'm going to share 7 Stoic lessons to help you gain total control over your mind and never again be dominated by things outside of your reach. Before we start, I want you to participate. Leave a comment with today's phrase, "I control my mind." I want to see everyone writing this in the comments. If this content helps you in any way, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this right now. Open your mind, pay attention, because every word that follows could change the way you see life. Now, let's dive into the 7 Stoic lessons to take full control of your mind. The mind is your castle. Close the gates. Imagine a large, imposing castle with tall walls and iron gates. Inside, there are immeasurable treasures: your peace, your clarity, your inner strength. Now think, would you let anyone enter and steal from your castle? Surely not. But every day, without realizing it, many of us let invading thoughts enter and destroy our mental fortress. We open the gates to doubts, anxieties, fears, and concerns that don't belong to us. We allow any external noise to affect us, let any criticism shake us, let someone else's problems become our burden, and then we wonder why we feel overwhelmed, confused, and lost. The Stoics teach us that the mind should be protected like a castle. If we're not the guardians of our own thoughts, we'll be victims of any invader who wants to take control. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But the opposite is also true. Your unhappiness depends on what you let into your mind. If you don't control what you think, your mind becomes a house with no doors, where any negative thought can enter and settle in. Now tell me, who governs your thoughts? Who's in charge? You or the world? When you let other people's problems weigh on your shoulders, when you accept that others' opinions define your emotions, when you give in to worries about things you can't change, you're letting strangers sit on the throne of your own castle. And a king who doesn't govern his own kingdom is merely a puppet of chaos. If you want to take control of your mind, the first thing you need to do is build a powerful filter for your thoughts. Not everything that crosses your mind deserves your attention. Not every idea that pops up should be nurtured. The big mistake people make is thinking that every thought that appears must be accepted as truth. But the reality is that many of the thoughts that arise are just useless noise, reflections of insecurities, irrational fears, or external influences that shouldn't have space in your life. Imagine a messenger knocking at the door of your castle, bringing news. He says there's an enemy army marching in your direction. You have 2 options. You can panic, believe without questioning, and go into a frenzy. Or you can examine the information, check its validity, and wisely decide what to do. The same goes for your thoughts. When a negative thought appears, "I'm not good enough, everything is going to go wrong, I'll never make it," you can accept it as an absolute truth, or you can question it. Ask yourself, is this idea based on facts or just passing emotions? Does this thought strengthen me or weaken me? The Stoics teach us that we have the power to judge and select the thoughts we let in. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The problem is not the thought itself, but the weight we give to it." If you start treating your thoughts like visitors and not the masters of your castle, you'll have a level of control that few reach. In addition to filtering internal thoughts, you also need to protect your mind from external influence. The truth is, We're surrounded by information, opinions, news, and social pressures that try to invade our minds all the time. If you're not aware of this, you end up absorbing everything without a filter. Think about social media, for example. You wake up, grab your phone, and before even having breakfast, you've already been bombarded with bad news, aggressive opinions, unrealistic comparisons, and useless distractions. And what happens? Your mood has already been affected before the day even begins. If you want to protect your mind, you need to be more selective about what you consume. Ask yourself, does this make me stronger or weaker? Does it bring me clarity or confusion? Does it help me grow or keep me trapped in a cycle of negativity? The Stoic doesn't let the noise of the world control them. They carefully choose what enters their mind and discard what doesn't serve them. Another dangerous external influence is other people's opinions. If you're constantly worried about what others think, your mind will never be free. You'll be a prisoner of judgment, shaping your actions to please others instead of doing what's right for you. But what's more important, the approval of strangers or your inner peace? Remember, no one can affect you without your permission. Now that you know you must filter your thoughts and protect your mind from outside influences, there's a third essential step: mental training. Just like a warrior trains their body, you need to train your mind to be strong, resilient, and disciplined. This means developing the habit of observation. Pay attention to your own thoughts. Notice them without reacting right away. When you feel anger, insecurity, or fear, don't act on impulse. Take a step back and analyze. Ask yourself, is this useful? Does it deserve my energy? Do I need to react, or can I simply ignore it? Additionally, practice your ability to live in the present. Many lose control of their minds because they are stuck in the past or anxious about the future. But what's already happened is gone, and what's to come hasn't arrived. All you have is the now. The Stoic knows that the only time that truly matters is this moment. Lastly, develop the habit of strengthening your mind with positive thoughts. Replace the negative with the positive. Instead of saying, I can't, say, I'm still learning. Instead of thinking this is a problem, think, this is a challenge that will make me stronger. The Stoic shapes their mind every day, like a sculptor working on their own soul. If you want total control of your mind, you must become the guardian of your castle. Don't let any thought in. Filter, question, protect yourself from external influence, and train your mind to be strong. The Stoic doesn't get swept up by the chaos of the world. They maintain mastery over themselves. Lesson 2. Time is your master. Waste it and you'll be a slave. Time is the one thing you can never get back. Losing money, opportunities, or material possessions can be frustrating, but there's always a chance to get them back. Time, however, is a tough master. It never returns what's been lost. The problem is that many live as if they have an eternity ahead of them, putting off decisions and leaving for later what should be done now. The Stoic knows that every minute is precious and that every moment must be used wisely. Think about how much of your life is wasted on distractions and meaningless worries. A mind that's not in control gets lost in pointless arguments and empty habits. Hours slip through your fingers on social media, aimless conversations, and obsessive thoughts about things that can't be changed. If you don't control your time, it will be controlled by something or someone else. The result? A life without direction, full of regrets when it's too late to change. The waste of time isn't just about obvious distractions. It hides in small things, in procrastination disguised as planning, in the constant search for validation, in waiting for motivation that never arrives. The truth is harsh but necessary. Time doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just passes. If you're putting off a change, a decision, or an action you know is necessary, know that you're fooling yourself. In Stoic philosophy, there's a deep understanding that time is one of the few resources we can control, yet most people treat it carelessly. Seneca warned us, it's not that we have little time, it's that we waste a lot. This phrase should be a constant reminder. It's not about working nonstop or living in a state of alert all the time, but being intentional with every moment, eliminating what doesn't contribute to your growth and inner strength. The great danger of an uncontrolled mind is that it becomes a prisoner of the past and future. A person can spend their whole life lamenting mistakes that can no longer be fixed or fearing what hasn't even happened yet. In both cases, they're not living in the present, the only real time. Those who surrender to the past carry the weight of memories that can't be changed. Those who lose themselves in the future suffer from scenarios that may never happen. Both waste the most valuable time of all, the now. Procrastination is a silent enemy of the mind. It hides behind well-crafted excuses. Many say, "I'm not ready yet. I'll do it later. I'll start tomorrow." The problem is that this tomorrow never comes for those who don't decide to act. Marcus Aurelius was clear in his Meditations. Perform every act of your life as though it were your last. The urgency to live well must not be ignored. A Stoic understands that lost time never returns, and that the only sensible choice is to treat each day as a unique opportunity. For many, life is endlessly postponed. People who want to change keep waiting for the right moment, as if there's a divine sign telling them when to act. But the right moment never comes because it doesn't exist. There is only the decision to start now or give in to the endless cycle of waiting. Those who delay their own progress end up living a mediocre life. Being in control of your own time means more than just avoiding distractions. It means knowing where to invest your energy, focus, and effort. It means cutting out what's unnecessary, eliminating bad habits, and focusing on what really matters. Ask yourself, does the way you spend most of your time today take you where you want to be? Are the hours you spend each day building the life you want, or are they just keeping you stuck? If the answer isn't satisfying, it's time to take charge. A disciplined mind understands that time is the greatest asset it has. Therefore, it doesn't give in to laziness, relaxation, or indecision. Every minute is treated as something sacred because life is nothing more than the sum of these minutes. Now take a moment to think. If today were the last day of your life, would you be happy with how you've spent your time so far? If the answer is no, maybe it's time to change, because time will keep passing, whether you make the most of it or not. And those who learn this lesson too late will sadly find that the most valuable opportunities have already slipped away. The Stoic knows that time is their greatest teacher. If they respect it and use it wisely, they will gain a life full of purpose and strength. If they waste it, they will be doomed to be a slave to regret. Lesson 3. Be a mirror, not a sponge. Think of a calm lake, where the surface reflects the sky perfectly. Now, imagine the same lake being stirred by a storm. The reflection disappears, and everything turns into a whirlwind of chaos. Your mind can be like this lake, clear, stable, and serene, or it can be disturbed by every small external influence that crosses your path. Most people live like sponges, absorbing everything that happens around them. Others' problems, meaningless opinions, pointless negativity. But the Stoic learns to be a mirror. They reflect the world, but don't let it dirty them. What happens around them shouldn't define their inner state. Many become prisoners of others' instability, reacting to every provocation, allowing other people's energy to control their mood and decisions. If someone gets angry with you, your mind is soon taken over by anger. If someone criticizes you, your confidence crumbles. If the environment is tense, your balance is lost. This is the way of the weak. True control of the mind happens when you decide that nothing from the outside will have the power to change your internal state without your permission. External influences are constant. Every day, you are bombarded with information, opinions, and emotions that aren't yours. A cruel comment, an alarming news story, a negative attitude from someone close to you. All of this tries to infiltrate your mind and become part of your reality. But those who have control over themselves don't become prisoners of these forces. A mirror reflects, but doesn't absorb. You can observe without reacting, understand without being affected. You need to create a mental barrier against this contamination. Imagine yourself in a situation where someone tries to provoke you. The usual reaction would be to absorb this energy and respond explosively. But the Stoic does it differently. They listen, observe, and decide that negativity doesn't need to be theirs. They reflect, but don't let what's outside transform them. This is one of the greatest signs of mental strength, the ability to stay unshaken even in the middle of the storm. Society encourages us to be sponges. From an early age, we're taught to seek approval, react to the environment's demands, and absorb values and behaviors without questioning. But this makes us vulnerable, easy to manipulate, slaves to circumstances. When you learn to be a mirror, you begin to live according to your own principles, not others' expectations. None of this means you should be indifferent or unfeeling. Stoicism is not an invitation to become cold or distant, but rather to develop mental clarity that allows you to discern what deserves your energy and what should be ignored. If something doesn't bring value to your life, if it doesn't strengthen your mind, if it doesn't teach you something useful, why let it take up space inside you? Epictetus said, "If someone tells you that someone spoke badly of you, don't try to defend yourself. Just reply, 'They don't know the rest of my flaws,' or they would have said even more." This is the mindset of someone who isn't shaken by external opinions. A person who truly knows themselves doesn't care about others' thoughts, because they know that doesn't define their worth. Instead of absorbing, they reflect and move forward. The central question is, how do you become that mirror? How do you stop the world from invading your mind and stealing your peace? The first step is to develop the habit of observing without immediately reacting. When something emotionally impacts you, take a breath, analyze, and ask yourself, does this truly deserve my attention? Is it worth my energy? Most of the time, the answer will be a clear no. What seems urgent in the moment often proves irrelevant once it's past. Another useful strategy is to consciously choose what you consume. News, social media, conversations, all of this can be a source of mental contamination if you're not selective. What enters your mind directly affects how you think, feel, and act. Just like a clean mirror reflects the image clearly, your mind needs to be free of unnecessary distractions to function well. Discipline is also essential. Becoming a mirror requires practice. At first, you'll still feel the urge to react, to absorb, to respond in kind. But over time, you'll notice that this need fades away. You'll realize that you don't need to prove anything to anyone, that you shouldn't carry burdens that aren't yours, and that you can simply observe, learn, and move forward. Being a mirror is freeing. It means that you are in control. Your peace doesn't depend on outside factors, and your balance can't be taken away from you. While most will keep absorbing everything the world throws at them, you'll have a control that few possess. The freedom to choose what deserves your attention and what should be ignored. Lesson 4. The world owes you nothing. Accept it and be free. There's a common belief that keeps many people stuck in lives of frustration and anger. The idea that the world owes them something. Some think they deserve respect just for existing. Others believe life should be easier and that the challenges they face are cruel and unfair. But the truth is harsh and undeniable. The world owes you nothing. There are no guarantees, no promises that everything will turn out as you expect. Accepting this isn't being negative, it's being free. Many live as if they're waiting for divine rewards for their struggles. They work hard and expect recognition. They do the right thing and believe they'll never be betrayed. They're kind and expect others to treat them the same way. But reality doesn't work like that. Life follows its own course, indifferent to our expectations. The sooner this truth is understood, the less unnecessary suffering there will be. Much of people's suffering comes from resisting what already is. They get upset about situations they can't change, complain about difficulties, and waste energy fighting the inevitable. However, the energy spent complaining is the same energy that could be used to act. The difference between an ordinary person and a Stoic is simple. The former wastes time lamenting life's unfairness. The latter understands that the game was never about what's fair, but about how to play with the cards they have. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" a strong mind reframes the question, "What can I do now?" Reality will never be exactly as we want, but we always have the power to decide how we respond. This doesn't mean passively accepting everything that happens, but understanding that fighting against what can't be changed is wasting strength. Epictetus teaches us, don't wish for things to happen the way you want, but wish for things to happen as they do, and your life will be peaceful. This is the mindset that differentiates those who live troubled from those who live in peace. Acceptance isn't resignation, it's intelligence. It's using what we have to our advantage instead of wasting energy lamenting what we don't. Imagine a sailor at sea, expecting the wind to always blow in their favor. They get frustrated when facing storms and curse the ocean for being relentless. Now, think of the experienced navigator. They know they can't control the wind, but they can adjust the sails. That's the Stoic. They don't demand that the world be kind to them, but they learn to navigate through any storm. People who believe the world owes them something live in a constant cycle of disappointment. They always expect life to be fair, others to recognize their worth, everything to go the way they want. When this inevitably doesn't happen, they feel betrayed, angry, and trapped in resentment. But the question is, who said life should meet your expectations? Accepting that nothing is guaranteed doesn't mean abandoning your dreams or stopping the pursuit of what you want. It simply means understanding that everything we achieve must come from our own actions, not from a sense of entitlement. Those who understand this stop complaining and start acting. Instead of waiting for recognition, they work hard and become excellent. Instead of complaining about the lack of opportunities, they create their own. Instead of feeling wronged, they adapt, learn, and grow. A common mistake is thinking that this acceptance leads to coldness or complacency, but it's actually the opposite. When we understand that the world isn't here to satisfy our desires, we become stronger, more resilient, and more prepared for any challenge. Life is as it is. It's up to us to decide what to do with it, whether in professional life, relationships, or inner struggles. This mindset completely changes the way we see reality. If something doesn't go as expected, there's no despair, only analysis and adaptation. If someone acts ungrateful, there's no bitterness, just the understanding that everyone acts according to their own nature. Nothing outside has the power to control your mind unless you allow it. Now, take a moment. How many times have you felt frustrated because you expected something from life or others? How many times have you wasted time dwelling on the past, feeling wronged? If you still believe the world owes you something, you're holding on to an illusion that only brings suffering. But if you choose to let go of this belief now, you'll be taking a step toward a freedom few ever experience. Lesson 5. Silence is golden. Learn the art of speaking less. Few things reveal more about a person than the way they use words. Those who speak without thinking easily give themselves away, lose authority, and show a lack of control over themselves. On the other hand, the person who masters the art of silence and speaks with care has a strong presence. They inspire respect without raising their voice, assert their authority without justification, and never get lost in pointless arguments. Talking too much is a sign of a mind lacking control. Conscious silence, on the other hand, is a sign of inner strength. In today's world, where everyone wants to be heard and few want to listen, the ability to speak less has become a rare advantage. Many think that the number of words spoken in a day defines their importance, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The Stoic knows that speaking less doesn't mean knowing less, but rather valuing words more. They understand that not everything needs to be said, that silence has its own weight, and that true influence doesn't come from long speeches, but from wisdom packed into a few words. Those who talk too much usually do it on impulse. They try to fill every empty space as if silence bothers them. This happens because often silence reveals what many try to hide: insecurity, fragility, fear of not being noticed. But the truth is, those who really have something to say don't need to shout. The loudest voice is the one that speaks only when necessary. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen more and speak less." This isn't just a biological observation, but a life strategy. A person who speaks less listens more, learns more, and understands better what's around them. They don't get lost in meaningless chatter, don't reveal their weaknesses, and don't engage in pointless arguments. They observe, absorb, and when they speak, each word carries real weight. The mistake many make is always wanting to give their opinion, as if everyone must know what they think about everything. But is that really necessary? Not everything needs to be said. Often silence is the best response. There are times when one word spoken too much can ruin a plan, destroy a relationship, or reveal something that shouldn't be shown. Speaking less is, first and foremost, an exercise in wisdom. Controlling your words doesn't mean never expressing yourself, but knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. There are times when your voice can improve a situation, but there are also times when silence is the stronger choice. Knowing the difference between these situations is what separates an impulsive person from a wise one. In the middle of a discussion, for example, most people's instinct is to react immediately, to respond, to prove they are right. But the Stoic does differently. They don't rush to reply because they know that a word spoken in the heat of the moment can have consequences that last forever. They breathe, think, and if necessary, choose their words carefully. Often they realize that the best response is silence. Not every provocation deserves a reaction. Speaking less also protects us from showing our weaknesses. Those who expose everything they think, feel, and want become vulnerable, predictable, and manipulable. That's why true power lies in discretion. The Stoic acts, but doesn't announce their plans ahead of time. They achieve, but don't boast. They suffer, but don't make a spectacle of it. Silence protects, strengthens, and confuses those who try to figure it out. Plus, those who speak less have more time to reflect. When you're always talking, there's no space to process information, to mature ideas. Silence creates room for deep thought, introspection, and seeing things clearly. It's in silence that we find the most important answers. The modern world has trained us to talk non-stop. Social media, endless conversations, the need to respond quickly to any message. All of this makes people feel like they must constantly express themselves. But true mental control comes from the ability to break free from this need. When you realize that you don't need to have an opinion on everything, that you don't need to react to everything, that you don't need to be heard all the time, you gain a freedom that few people have. If you want to strengthen your mind, start practicing silence. Practice listening more, speaking less, and talking only when necessary. Control your tongue the way a warrior controls their sword, using it only at the right moments, with care and intention. Words are like arrows. Once launched, they can't be taken back. Choose yours wisely. Lesson 6. Pain is a teacher. Learn the lesson. No true change happens without pain. From the moment we enter the world, pain accompanies us, shaping our journey. Growing hurts, learning hurts, changing hurts. But while most people try to avoid any form of suffering, the Stoics understood something important. Pain isn't an enemy, but a strict teacher. Those who run from it lose the chance to grow. Those who face it head-on learn lessons that could never be gained in any other way. Discomfort teaches what comfort hides. If everything were easy, if there were never any difficulties or tough moments, how would you develop strength? How would you learn patience, endurance, or courage? It's precisely through difficulties that your character is shaped. Every challenge is an opportunity for growth, but only for those willing to learn from it. Those who see pain as punishment miss the most important lesson. Imagine a blacksmith shaping a sword. The raw metal has to go through fire, the impact of a hammer, and the shock of cold water. Without this process, it would never become a sharp blade. The same happens with the human mind. Without challenges, without falls, without failures, you would never develop true mental strength. The Stoic doesn't seek to avoid pain, but rather to draw from it everything that can make them stronger. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind just as exercise strengthens the body." This truth, though simple, is overlooked by many. People seek comfort, safety, easy paths. They want success without failure, growth without effort, learning without mistakes. But that's impossible. Nothing worth having comes without pain. The sooner this is understood, the less time will be wasted complaining, and more time will be spent learning and growing. Suffering is not something we choose, but our response to it is. Two people can go through the same tough situation. One gives in to despair, while the other uses the experience to become stronger. The choice is always in the hands of the one facing the trial. You can use pain as a step to rise or as an anchor to sink. Emotional pain, failures, rejections, all these can be seen as signs that something went wrong or as chances to improve. If someone lets you down, you can mourn the blow or learn to be more selective about the people you let into your life. If a plan fails, you can give up or see the mistake as a necessary step toward getting it right. Nothing is a loss if the lesson is learned. Moments of pain also show us who we truly are. When everything is fine, it's easy to seem strong. But what happens when everything falls apart? When plans fail? When people leave? When life doesn't go as expected? It's in those moments that someone's true character shows up. The Stoic remains steady because they understand that pain is part of the journey. They don't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" but, "What can I learn from this?" Resisting pain only makes it stronger. Many spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort, but that doesn't protect them. It only makes them weaker. Those who have never faced challenges, who have never dealt with difficulties, who have always run from suffering, end up being defeated at the first sign of adversity. A mind that's never been tested is like a muscle that's never been exercised, weak, unable to carry any weight. This doesn't mean seeking unnecessary suffering, but recognizing that it's inevitable and learning to deal with it in the best way possible. Accepting it isn't about giving up. It's about knowing that pain is part of life and using it as fuel to grow. A clear example of this are athletes. They train until their bodies hurt because they know that's how they get stronger. A warrior gets used to the weight of their armor, the impact of strikes, because they know that without this resistance, they won't be ready for battle. The same applies to the mind. The more you endure, the stronger you become. Pain never comes without a reason. If you look back, you'll realize that the toughest times in your life were the ones that taught you the most. It was the falls that showed you how to get up. It was the mistakes that taught you the right way. It was the losses that made you appreciate what really matters. If each difficulty is seen as a lesson, nothing will be able to bring you down. And now I ask you, what have you been doing with your pain? Have you been learning from it or letting it hold you back? If you want to take control of your mind, you need to change your relationship with suffering. Instead of resisting, take advantage of the lessons that pain brings. Instead of running, face it. Instead of complaining, learn. Pain can be a punishment or a teacher. You choose. Lesson 7. Your emotions are not orders. Don't follow them blindly. How many times have you let a momentary emotion take over and later regretted it? The anger that made you say something you didn't want to. The fear that stopped you from acting. The anxiety that distorted your view of things. The problem isn't the emotions themselves. They are part of who we are. But the idea that we should follow them without questioning. A strong mind isn't one that doesn't feel, but one that feels without being controlled. Not every emotion should be followed. Anger can deceive you, making you react without thinking to something that, over time, wouldn't even matter. Fear can be useful at times, but often it just paralyzes you. Anxiety can alert you to risks, but it can also create fears that exist only in your head. When you confuse an emotion with an order, you lose control over yourself. Stoicism teaches that the mind should be like the captain of a ship. Emotions are like waves, sometimes calm, sometimes rough. If the captain panics when they see a storm, the ship sinks. But if they stay calm, adjust the sails, and stay on course, no sea can bring them down. Emotions arise, but the final decision should always be yours. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If something disturbs you, it's not what happens, but your judgment of what happens." That's the key point. What we feel doesn't come from the outside world, but from the way we see what happens. If you see criticism as an attack, you'll feel anger. But if you see it as a chance to learn, you'll feel growth. If you see failure as an end, you'll feel despair. But if you understand it as part of the process, you'll feel progress. Many people live as slaves to their emotions because they never learn to question them. They feel something and quickly believe it defines reality. But is the emotion right? If you're afraid of something new, does that really mean it's dangerous? Or just that you're reacting to the unknown? If you feel anxiety before making a decision, does that mean something bad is going to happen? Or just that you're stepping out of your comfort zone? Reflecting on the truth of emotion is the first step in not being controlled by it. Impulsive reactions are what destroy inner peace. When you act without thinking, you give control of your life to the emotions of the moment, and these emotions are temporary. What you feel now can change in an hour, a day, or a month. So, why let something so short-lived dictate your actions? The Stoic understands that emotion can be felt, but it doesn't need to control what you do. Controlling emotions doesn't mean denying them, but recognizing them without being enslaved by them. If you're angry, accept that you're angry, but don't act without thinking. If you're afraid, acknowledge the fear, but don't let it stop you from moving forward. If you're sad, feel it, but don't dive into it as if it will last forever. Nothing you feel lasts forever. Knowing that is a great power. A good way to handle emotions is to take a step back when something affects you. Instead of reacting right away, stop and think. Ask yourself, does this really matter? How will I feel about this in a week, a month, or a year? This simple moment of reflection can prevent poor decisions and bring clarity. The emotion comes like a wave, but if you don't throw yourself into it, it will pass. Today's world encourages the opposite of emotional control. People are taught to express everything they think, to react immediately to anything, to live according to how they feel in the moment. But that's not freedom, it's slavery. The person who lets themselves be carried away by emotions becomes predictable and manipulable. Those who understand this gain an advantage few have, the power to act with wisdom, not impulse. Watching without reacting right away is a skill that can be trained. When you notice a strong emotion rising, try waiting a few minutes before making any move. At first it will be hard, but over time, you'll see that not everything needs an immediate response. Now think, how many times in your life have you made decisions that later you realized were driven by a passing emotion? How many times have you said something you shouldn't have, done something without thinking, or avoided a challenge just because in the moment it seemed like the best thing to do? If you had waited a little longer, thought a little better, how might things have turned out differently? The difference between those who have control and those who don't lies exactly at this point. If you want to master your mind, start by taking control of your emotions. They are not your enemies. but they shouldn't be your masters either. Learn to listen to them, but don't follow them blindly. Be the captain of your own ship and steer your emotions, instead of being carried away by them. If you've made it this far, it's because you're truly committed to taking control of your mind. It's not enough just to listen. You need to put it into practice. Each of these lessons can change your life, but only if you make them part of your daily routine. Mental control doesn't come overnight, but it starts with small daily choices. Now I want to know, who truly stayed with this message until the end? Comment now. I'm dedicated. I want to see who the true ones are, committed to this transformation. If this content made sense to you, leave your like to help reach more people who need to hear this message. And if you're not part of the channel yet, subscribe now. This way, you'll have access to more teachings that will strengthen your mind. And one more thing, share this video with someone who needs to learn to command their thoughts. Knowledge only has value when it is shared. See you in the next video.